Welcome back, everyone, to our Domestic Supply Chain Summit. And I'm very excited because in this chat in particular, we're going to start diving into really supply chain as a whole, more from like an enterprise level, looking at some of our largest retailers, CPG companies, and just overall trends from those leading in demand and in products moving across the United States, but also what those companies are doing to strengthen their supply chains. And I thought, who better to have here with us than Brittain Ladd himself. Brittain, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience if they don't know you already.
Well, I'm Brittain Ladd. I work as a global supply chain strategy consultant. I've been doing this for about 15 years now, and I've got a very solid background in all things supply chain, all things logistics, and it's certainly great to be back on the program.
Yeah, very excited for this. And let's start off with just kind of general, looking back at 24 into 25. What are the couple of things that you think companies in particular are doing wrong when it comes to their supply chain so far this year? And what do you think you would like to see from them in 25 to fix those mistakes?
So that's really an interesting question, and it's a very important question. So in my role, I have lots of companies that reach out to me and they speak to me about their supply chain and strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and so forth. And I've noticed that in 2024 especially, there are many problems within corporate supply chains. And they seem to think, the executives of these companies, they seem to think that it's related to technology or the economy and so forth, but it's really not. And so I've been researching this pretty extensively. And the thing that I've noticed is that there are really two things that I think companies are doing wrong. And number one, and this is very important, companies are not hiring and placing the best talent that they can find into roles related to supply chain management. And this is especially true at SVP of supply chain roles, EVP of supply chain roles, and especially chief supply chain officer roles. And the thing that jumped out at me as I really began to research this is that I was amazed at how many of the individuals who have been promoted over the last 2 to 3 years into senior roles in these companies to be responsible for the supply chain have no background in supply chain management. They don't have degrees in supply chain management or logistics or distribution or operations research, industrial engineering. Far too many were just simply placed in the role with no experience. They have degrees in French literature and things like that. And if you don't believe me, you can go to LinkedIn and you can just type in Chief Supply Chain Officer and look at the profiles of the individuals who come up, and you will see the majority were placed in those roles with no experience. And so that is hurting companies. And these executives, the CEOs, are saying to me, why is my supply chain suddenly so bad? And what I have to tell them is, because you have the wrong person running your supply chain. So that's absolutely something that companies have to fix. And what I say to these executives is that you really want to think MEI, merit, excellence, and intelligence. You want to find the best of the best because supply chains are so important. And for those of you who have seen me on this program before or read my post, or for those of you who haven't, I always say the same thing. The purpose of a supply chain is to enable growth. And if you don't have individuals who have the capability to run a supply chain, your supply chain will crash. It won't grow. The other thing that I've noticed throughout 2024 is that there is a failure to understand there's a big difference of technology and supply chain optimization and understanding. And so the thing that I've been pushing companies to do is that you really want to reach out to a corporation called Throughput AI. Ali Raza is the CEO. And Throughput leverages very advanced software, a very advanced business model, and they have the ability to really work with corporations to assess their supply chains and really, truly understand what's going on. Where are their issues? Where are their opportunities? I don't work for Throughput AI. I never have. I just simply learned from so many of the companies who've relied on them that they are able to do so many things that are special and unique that I really believe in 2025, very large corporations should say to themselves, this really is the year we should partner with Throughput AI.
Interesting. Especially the hiring aspect you touched on is, well, why do you think that's happening? Why do you think that extra focus on bringing in people with the best talent into those roles has been missed? And what could change that into 25?
Well, based on everything that I've discovered through all of my efforts, I've been researching this now for over a year. 3 letters are the reason why. DEI. And DEI has convinced companies that, well, you know what? We really want to promote some people internally, so what can we do? Well, how about we make them the chief supply chain officer? How about we make them an EVP of supply chain? And although these individuals have no supply chain experience, it's certainly a promotion. So I understand why corporations think to themselves that, oh my gosh, this individual's worked so hard for us. They're extremely talented and they're capable. So why wouldn't we promote them? The problem is supply chains are really complicated affairs. End to end, you are dealing with hundreds and sometimes thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of suppliers and third-party logistics providers, transportation providers, and so on. Then you have the technology challenges, the analytical problems, understanding supply chain markets globally or global economies and how that impacts supply chains. So you have to have some legitimate skill to be able to run a supply chain. And that's really what I say to CEOs. You're promoting somebody into something that isn't managed. They have to run it because the purpose of a supply chain is to do what? It's to move material. It's to move finished product. Then it becomes a logistics challenge. Then it becomes a transportation challenge. Then it becomes a last mile delivery challenge, a warehouse distribution fulfillment challenge. So that's what's happened. These companies, and I understand why they're doing it, but they have failed to understand that supply chains are too complex to put people into the roles who have no experience. And so when that changes, and my advice to the CEOs is that you must move these individuals out. And if that means you have to fire them and move them out of the company and you bring in somebody truly skilled, that's what you have to do. Because when supply chains become out of balance, when they lose equilibrium, things can go south very quickly. It really can create a very challenging and difficult problem to be solved. So this is something that companies simply can't wait any longer to fix.
On that note, Brittain, who do you think has to start looking at hiring someone new? Going into 2025, fresh start, what companies need to look at certain roles in supply chain and why? What needs to be fixed within those companies too?
Well, number one is Target. I've written about Target now for 3 years. I've been very critical of Target. I've been extremely critical of Target's supply chain for 5 years. Target's one of those companies that always puts out these glowing press releases about everything they're doing in supply chain and how great it's going to be. And yet, here it is, 2024, at the most important time of the year, Target isn't able to keep product on their shelves. They have an inexperienced chief supply chain officer and chief operating officer who made an egregious mistake in wanting to bring in product early because they were convinced that the longshoreman strike was going to last for months, if not longer. 2 days prior to them making their decision to bring in product early, I had written a post where I said, I believe the strike will last no longer than 48 to 72 hours. And I was 100% correct. So the individuals simply don't understand their business and they don't understand business globally. So I think that they should be replaced, and I think Target should hire more people. Kohl's is a company. In 2003, Kohl's was worth $23 billion. Today, they're worth $1.5 billion. Yet, Kohl's still keeps investing very heavily in their supply chain, and they show very little effort. They show very little improvement. And I think someone like Kohl's should say, maybe we just outsource this to Amazon or some other third party. Why don't we just simply leverage AWS and all of their supply chain tools, and we get rid of the legacy systems that we're using? So, and I could just go on and on and on. Macy's, for example, Macy's is really struggling. So I think there are many companies out there, supply chain, and whoever it is, regardless of the company, for those that are struggling, I really think they have to look at their people.
Yeah, I want to take a couple minutes here. I do want to take a step out from the internal people at these companies and almost look at more of their political or geopolitical strategies. Clearly, we're going into a new year with a new administration. That always changes things up a little bit, and particularly one who's not even in the role yet, right? And keeping people on their toes in regards to what tariffs might look like or what their trade partners might look like in the future. What is your advice for leaders out there when it comes to strategizing the geopolitical challenges of this country, China as well, going into 2025? And how do you see any of those challenges affecting supply chains here in the United States?
The main thing is, I always say this to these companies: work backwards. And I know a lot of people say that, but my argument to them is work backwards until you get to the actual delivery of your product to the customer. And what does it take to do that? And then evaluate what's changed. Can you insource certain things of your supply chain that maybe currently be done in China at the moment? Are there lower cost countries, or are there better countries that maybe you can move production to, or something, or whatever? You should be looking at that. But the main thing is, never forget, you have to be able to execute. The worst thing that companies can do, that leaders can do at the beginning of a new year, is say, I'm really going to reduce my costs this year. I'm really going after costs. Because whenever I see companies do that, it usually negatively impacts their ability to execute. And that has been a challenge for many companies over the last several years, their lack of execution. And so certainly evaluate every aspect of the supply chain, but make sure that what you're really doing is accelerating your ability to deliver your product to the customer. You're doing things to improve the customer experience. And you really want to be able to make sure that you're leveraging every aspect that you can of supply chain analytics, data mining. You certainly want to be looking at, how can we better leverage AI? How can we, maybe partner with a third party or contract a third party that gives us better capabilities in our supply chain? So I think that's what they should do. The worst thing they can do is overthink this, is try and get too cute with the supply chain. I always say to companies, put the focus on performance, on execution. Don't be that supply chain company that says, I'm attracted to every shiny object and I'm going to go with this new software and that new software. I'm not a fan of that. I think you always want to start the year with, this is how we're going to execute. And then, and only then, be thinking throughout the year, here's where maybe I can make some changes in technology and so forth.
Yeah. The audience all loves some Brittain Ladd content. So I'm going to push this. We'll go just a little bit further in this conversation to on the technology aspect of things. I know that you follow a number, if not all, of the big players in the freight tech space in particular. And it's interesting because we're not even into 25 yet. And my email inbox is blowing up with deals and acquisitions and talks of mergers, et cetera. On the M&A front going into 25, what's on your mind? What would you love to see? What deals out there do you think are game changers for the industry that should just happen? Or what areas of technology are you excited for coming into next year?
So I look at this a little differently. I look at it from the perspective of, so why was there so much acquisition in 2024? It's because many of these startups, these technology startups, especially the supply chain startups, which in my opinion are really some of the worst that I've ever seen. There are really good startups, and then there are really bad startups. And I think the majority of the supply chain startups were really bad. I think that they really never had a product that was anywhere near as capable as they were claiming that it was. And so the reason why we see some of these acquisitions taking place is these startups have run out of money. Nobody is willing to fund them any longer. They have to be acquired or they go out of business. So that's something that's a fact. What I am always looking for is what technology, what platform really can make a company better. And not just from the supply chain perspective, but what really can make a company better. And so, as I alluded to earlier, I think we're going to see many more companies turning to throughput AI or competitors out there that are going to be able to help companies really understand this is your current state supply chain. This is where you have issues in your supply chain, serious issues. And these are things that you can immediately do to improve. One of the big things that I say to companies is, how much working capital do you have tied up in your inventory? And they oftentimes can't answer that question. So I say, then attack it. Find out, do you have too much inventory? Do you not have enough inventory in the right place? Let's figure that out. Find someone who can really do that analysis for you. Because companies that can reduce working capital can then take that cash, that capital, and invest it in better technology. There are lots of technology companies out there. You've got SAP, you've got Blue Yonder, you've got Oracle, and so on. And I could go on and on. I'm not impressed with what I've been seeing over the last couple of years. These companies are not making as transformative a change in their platforms as I really believe that they should. So my advice to corporations is stop thinking that 2025 is the year that you want to find a new platform for supply chain, that you want to find a new TMS provider or something like that. The only company I could recommend that corporations should take a look at, if they haven't evaluated them, is the company Solvoyo, Solvoyo. I truly believe they're one of the best supply chain platforms out there. They're a really unique company. But for the others out there, especially Relax and Blue Yonder, companies like that, they really haven't done much. And so I say to corporations, stop. Don't give them any more investment. Don't buy any more of their modules. Force them to get better, and you should really just maintain what you're currently doing. Now, if someone comes along and there's a really fascinating and valuable AI product that maybe they want to latch onto, sure, I can understand why they may want to do that. But I don't think 2025 is the year to be saying, now's the time that we're going to simply do a complete change out of our platform or multiple platforms because we have legacy systems running our supply chain. I wouldn't do that. I would still treat 2025 as a year, again, understand what the economy is doing globally, make sure you understand where you can reduce costs in supply chain through some big optimization projects, and then really look at it and say, so how do we execute better? But that doesn't mean trying to confuse things or disrupt your own operations by trying to put in a new software platform or something like that. I just don't think 2025 is the right year to do that.
Yeah, let's talk of TMSs, more talk of awesome integrations, right? I think that's a big key too. I want to thank you, Brittain, for, of course, joining us and sharing your expertise with us today. It's always a wonderful conversation when we bring you on here. If people want to, of course, check out more of your content or see what's on your mind, where's the best place for them to do that?
Honest, just reach out to me at LinkedIn. I always respond. I always connect with people. And that's honestly the best way to do it. And I'm always open to hear whatever people want to talk about. And I always enjoy it when people do reach out to me.
Hey, well, I appreciate your continued support here. And for our audience, thank you so much for checking out this chat. And stay tuned for some more wonderful summit chats coming up as well.